Mark believed his life had followed a simple and honest path. He met Anna when he was 26 during a rainy autumn evening in a small grocery store where she worked part-time while finishing college. Mark had stopped there after a long shift repairing industrial machines. His jacket smelled like oil and metal, and he remembered feeling tired enough to barely think. Anna stood behind the counter scanning items for another customer. When it was Mark's turn, she smiled politely and asked how his day was. Something about the way she spoke made him answer honestly, instead of giving the usual short reply. That small conversation lasted less than a minute, but when Mark walked out of the store, he realized he was thinking about her smile. The next evening he returned, pretending he needed groceries he already had at home. Over the next weeks, their conversations grew longer. Anna was calm, thoughtful, and quietly funny. She listened more than she spoke, and Mark felt strangely comfortable around her. Within a year, they were inseparable. 2 years later, they married in a small ceremony attended only by close family and a few friends. They had little money and lived in a modest apartment with second-hand furniture, but neither of them cared. Mark worked long hours repairing equipment for factories across the county. Anna eventually found a stable position at a local insurance office. Their life was ordinary but peaceful. Then Daniel was born. Mark still remembered the hospital room clearly. The pale light through the window, the quiet sound of machines, and the moment the nurse placed the newborn in his arms. Daniel's tiny fingers wrapped around Mark's thumb, and something inside him changed forever. From that moment, Mark stopped thinking only about himself. Every decision he made was about giving Daniel a better life. He accepted every extra shift offered at work: night repairs, weekend jobs, emergency calls in the middle of the night. It was exhausting, but he never complained. Years passed quickly. Daniel grew into a quiet, curious boy who loved building things in the garage with his father. They fixed old radios, built wooden birdhouses, and repaired broken bicycles neighbors had thrown away. Anna often watched them from the kitchen window with a soft smile. Those evenings felt like proof that everything in Mark's life had happened exactly the way it was supposed to. The first small crack appeared during a family barbecue at Anna's parents' house. The afternoon was warm, and Daniel was running through the yard, chasing his cousins, while adults gathered around the grill. Mark stood talking with Anna's father when Anna's younger sister Emily approached holding her phone. She laughed awkwardly. "Mark, can I ask something weird?" He shrugged casually. "Sure." Emily turned the phone screen toward him, showing a family photo someone had posted online from their last vacation near the lake. Anna stood beside Daniel while Mark placed his arm around them both. Emily tilted her head slightly. "Has anyone ever told you Daniel doesn't really look like you?" Mark laughed and shook his head. "Kids don't always look like their parents." Emily hesitated. "Yeah, but he doesn't really look like Anna either." Mark glanced again at the picture. Daniel's hair seemed darker. His eyes were hazel, while Mark's were brown, and Anna's bright green. For a moment, something strange stirred in the back of Mark's mind, but he pushed the thought away immediately. Genetics were unpredictable. Still, later that evening he caught himself watching Daniel more closely than usual. Over the next few days, Mark tried to forget Emily's comment, but the thought refused to disappear completely. He found himself noticing details he had never questioned before. Daniel's eyes were hazel, a color neither Mark nor Anna shared. The boy's jawline was narrow, while Mark's face was broader. At first, Mark blamed himself for overthinking something meaningless. Yet the idea lingered quietly in the background of his thoughts. One afternoon, Mark returned home early because a repair job had been canceled. The house was silent. Anna was still at work, and Daniel was visiting a friend. Mark walked into the kitchen and noticed Anna's laptop open on the table. Normally, he would never look through her things. Their marriage had always been built on trust. But Emily's words echoed again in his mind. Mark sat down slowly. The screen showed Anna's email inbox. At first, there was nothing unusual. Work messages, advertisements, grocery reminders. As he reached to close the laptop, a new notification appeared at the top of the screen. The sender's name caught his attention. David H. The preview line read, "I saw Daniel yesterday. He's getting tall." Mark frowned. David? He didn't recognize the name. Before he could reconsider, he clicked the message. The email was short. "Anna, I didn't want to make things awkward earlier, but it was nice seeing you again. Daniel looks more like you every year. Let's talk sometime soon." Mark stared at the screen. His heart began beating faster. Who was David Harper? And why did he mention Daniel as if he knew him personally? Mark closed the laptop quickly, as if the computer itself had betrayed him. When Anna returned home that evening, everything appeared normal. She asked about his day and began preparing dinner, while Daniel excitedly talked about a science project at school. Mark watched her carefully, but saw no sign that she was hiding anything. Yet the email remained in his mind long after everyone went to bed. Over the following week, Mark quietly searched for the name David Harper online. It did not take long to find a social media profile with that exact name. The photo showed a man in his early 40s with dark hair and confident posture. But what caught Mark's attention immediately were the man's eyes. Hazel. The same unusual shade Daniel had. Mark felt a cold sensation move through his chest. He scrolled through the photos slowly. One image from several years earlier showed David standing near a lake that looked strangely familiar. Mark leaned closer to the screen. It was the same lake where Mark, Anna, and Daniel had spent their family vacation 5 years ago. Mark closed the laptop and sat back in his chair. The room suddenly felt too quiet. Had Anna known this man before they met? Or worse, had she known him while they were together? That evening during dinner, Mark studied Anna more carefully than he had in years. She laughed at Daniel's jokes and asked about his homework, just as she always did. But Mark noticed small details he had ignored before. The way she turned her phone screen away when it vibrated, the brief hesitation before answering certain questions, the subtle tension in her voice when Daniel mentioned the lake from their last vacation. Mark realized something unsettling. For the first time in 12 years, he was observing his own wife like a stranger. The following days became a quiet investigation Mark never expected to conduct. He paid attention to Anna's schedule, the times her phone received messages, and the small moments when she seemed distracted. Meanwhile, Daniel continued his normal routine, unaware of the storm building silently inside his father's mind. One evening, while they worked together in the garage, fixing an old bicycle, Daniel asked a simple question. "Dad, do you think I'll be good at fixing machines like you?" Mark forced a smile. "You'll probably be better than me." But as he said the words, a painful thought appeared in his mind. What if Daniel was not truly his son? The idea felt like betrayal just for thinking it. Everything changed the day Mark unexpectedly saw David Harper in person. He was shopping for groceries after work when he noticed a man at the end of the aisle talking on the phone. Mark recognized him instantly from the photos. David ended the call and glanced toward Mark. For a moment their eyes met. David nodded politely, like strangers often do, But Mark noticed something that made his stomach tighten. The shape of David's jaw and eyebrows looked strikingly similar to Daniel's. Mark stood frozen for several seconds before slowly walking away. That night, Mark barely slept. The resemblance he had noticed in the store replayed repeatedly in his mind. By morning, he had made a decision he never imagined making. He ordered a home DNA testing kit online. When the package arrived 2 days later, he hid it in the garage behind a stack of old tools. For several hours, he stared at the small box, feeling the weight of what he was about to do. If the test proved Daniel was his son, Mark would feel ashamed for doubting Anna. But if the results said otherwise, nothing in his life would ever be the same. Late that night, Mark quietly collected a DNA sample from Daniel's toothbrush while the boy slept. His hands trembled slightly as he sealed the envelope. The next morning, he mailed the sample before work. The testing company estimated the results would take about 2 weeks. Those 14 days felt longer than the past 12 years. During the waiting period, Mark continued pretending everything was normal. But inside, he felt like a man standing on thin ice, unsure when it would break beneath him. Every conversation with Anna felt tense. Every moment with Daniel felt precious and fragile. One evening, Mark came home to find Anna sitting alone at the kitchen table, looking unusually tired. Her phone lay face down beside her hand. For a brief moment, Mark considered asking directly about David Harper, but he remained silent. The truth would arrive soon enough. 7 days later, an email notification appeared on Mark's phone while he was at work. The subject line read, "DNA results ready." His heart began pounding instantly. He waited until he reached the garage at home before opening it. Mark logged into the testing company's website. The result appeared in bold text across the screen. Probability of paternity, 0%. For several seconds, Mark simply stared at the words, unable to breathe. Everything he believed about his life suddenly collapsed into silence. Memories flooded his mind. Daniel's first steps, birthdays, school projects, every moment he spent teaching the boy how to fix things in the garage. That evening, Mark placed the printed result on the kitchen table in front of Anna. She unfolded the paper slowly. Her face turned pale as she read the words. Anna's voice trembled. "Mark, I can explain." Mark shook his head slowly. "Explain how the son I raised for 12 years isn't mine." Later that night, Mark sat beside Daniel's bed, watching the boy sleep. The truth had destroyed his trust in Anna, but something deeper remained unchanged. Blood or not, Daniel had grown up calling him Dad, and that bond was far more complicated than any DNA test could explain.